Alright, today I'm going to be talking about and reviewing the Ibanez RGA 622XH Axe Design Lab guitar. So this is a guitar I picked up because the RGA, the arch top, was my dream guitar as a teenager. And because the black and gold is the same color as my cat, I'm going to talk about, the typical things, the playability, the feel of everything, the sound. Going to have a full mix demo, whether I recommend this guitar or not, so be sure to check the timestamps down below for what you're looking for. And finally, just got to mention this is unsponsored. No one's paying me money to talk about this guitar. This is my own guitar that I did research on and bought myself. I've used it in recording my songs that are here on YouTube and on streaming services, so I'm not sponsored, I'm not famous, I'm not in any amazing touring band or anything. I'm not the best guitar player in the world. I'm not a virtuoso by any means. I'm just a guy online who likes guitars. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. Alright, so first let's talk about the features of this guitar. If you're looking up reviews for this, you probably already know, but just to go over real quick, it has a mahogany body, it's got the arch top, the ebony fretboard, the maple neck. It has the low pro edge floating bridge with no locking tuners. It's got the 3-way switch with the coil split, the tone knob, the volume knob, these potentiometers, pretty standard stuff. And of course, it has the 27 frets, which probably everyone's curious about. It has the angled output jack right here. The pickups are, of course, passive pickups. We've got the ToneZone in the bridge, and I think it's the Air Norton single in the neck here. And of course, when I say neck, it's more like kind of in the middle. We'll talk about tone later, but basically it sounds more like a middle pickup. So that's the summary of the features, but how does it translate into like the feel, the playability? Let's dive more into detail now. So the body is pretty lightweight. I wouldn't say it's as light as I was expecting. Like, it's not ultra thin lightweight, but that might be due to the quality of the wood. You also have the tone block from the trim, so that adds a little weight too. But it sounds great, so that's okay. It's not like too heavy, not by any means. It doesn't put your shoulder to sleep. And when you balance it on a strap standing up, it has pretty good balance. Let's talk about the shape of the body. Let's talk about the arch top. So the arch top, it starts flat up here and then it curves away down as you get to the edges. And so then when you have your arm on it, it feels pretty comfortable. It's not like as much of a curve down as a forearm cut, and it's not as extreme of an angle as a bevel, but it's arched just enough that it basically fits perfectly when you're in playing position. And so also because it's arched, the bridge is gonna feel like a bit higher up. Like, it doesn't feel as high up as if you're playing a guitar with a tune-o-matic, you know how those bridges go way up there. It's in a pretty good place. So I don't play live these days, I'm just doing the internet thing, but like back in the day, like a decade ago, when I was playing in bands, I was playing an Ibanez S live, and that kind of has the same shape on top. So I'm pretty much used to the feel of this. So it doesn't quite feel like an RG because that has the forearm cut and it's more like flat, but it's kind of close. These days I am playing more like the RGs with the forearm cut, so I've over time gotten more used to that. But switching to this guitar feels like I'm coming back to something familiar and comfortable. So of course this guitar feels great to play standing up. Sitting down it does feel good too. Because the arch, like the curve, as I mentioned, isn't as much as the forearm carve. You do kind of feel the edge a bit, but it doesn't dig into your arm as much as like a carve top, where that comes down to like a flat 90-degree angle. So it is still plenty comfortable. Like, it's just fine when you're sitting playing in standard style. The body does feel better when you're sitting classical style, but the problem with that is the angled output jack. It's really great when you're standing up. You can feed the cable around the strap button, the lock and place trick, which is very important if you're playing live. But when you're playing classical style, the angle of the cable goes right into your leg, so you kind of have to adjust it a bit. It's kind of unpleasant, really unfortunate, especially if you're like sitting down recording a lot. So that is kind of annoying. It isn't enough to stop me from playing this guitar, from playing it sitting down, from playing it a bunch. But if that really matters to you, like if you're playing in the classical seated position a bunch and you really just can't have that cable hitting your leg, then just really consider that. Also, in terms of feel, are the frets. You can feel the difference between the nickel silver frets and a guitar with stainless steel frets. These are pretty high quality nickel silver frets. They haven't worn away super quick just yet. There's a lot of people out there who do prefer nickel silver frets. These are just tools for our trade. If you have a preference either way, good for you. Personally, I do prefer the feel of stainless steel. I like how smooth they are, the durability, etc. But I don't hate the nickel silver frets. Like, obviously it wasn't enough to stop me from buying the guitar, but it is kind of unfortunate and a little unusual in this day and age where you see stainless steel all over the place, especially in this price range. So personally, for me, that's a miss. Maybe if you're a fan of the more traditional fret wire, then that's a hit. All right, so speaking of like the frets on the neck, let's talk about the playability. So as mentioned, these are nickel silver frets. They're not as smooth as stainless steel, but they don't really slow you down, which is good because clearly this is designed for shredding. I find the neck is very thin, but it's not too thin, so it's not quite as thin as my J Custom, which is kind of a good thing because that guitar I pick up when I really have to try on a shred part, but because the neck is so thin, it fatigues my hand a bit more. So this is still a very thin neck, but it's not quite as thin. It doesn't feel quite as thin, which is good, so I can play this guitar for longer. I don't know exactly why. I'm not like a hand doctor or anything. While you're playing the guitar, the body doesn't get in your way. Like, you've got the nice comfortable arch. You've got these like carves in the horns right here, like the lower horns, so this is really nice when you're trying to hit that 27th fret. And you've got this carve way on the inside, so when you're shredding like this, you got your thumb behind the neck, it doesn't get in the way. So fantastic playability there. And then coming down to the body of the guitar, nothing gets in the way here. I've never hit the volume pot when playing, so that's good. The coil split switch here, it's not too close to either of the knobs, so you can always find it and hit it pretty nicely. I always keep the tone knob up all the way, so I don't really try to mess around with it, but it's been pretty good. It's not too loose, so it stays in place pretty well. And the blade switch is where you'd want it to be. Really just my biggest gripe about this guitar is that angled output jack. So it kind of messes, I guess, with the playability when you switch to like a classical style. I do gotta also mention too that for the guitars I have in this price range at this price point, it has needed a setup a bit more often than the others. So this one I've already had to set up like 3 times now. Of course, that is like owning it over like a year or so. The seasons change, etc. But other guitars I have in this price range, I've only needed to set them up like once, maybe twice a year. This one I've needed to do 3 times. So maybe that's just with the guitar. It hasn't been extreme. I just tried to keep the action pretty low. And so I'm doing that as the neck shifts a bit. It does get into like the fret buzz zone, and then I got to go back, redo it like a few months later. So just something good to note. Maybe you'll get a more robust guitar, but this one, it's not like unstable. It stays in tune. Over time, it's needed setups a bit more. All right, so let's talk about the tone of this guitar, and let's jump right to the question you probably have. How does it sound playing up on the 27th fret, like up here? The big gimmick of this guitar. So if you're down tuning your guitars a lot, I usually keep all my 6 strings and drop C. So that's gonna be a whole step down, except the lower string is 2 whole steps down. Having that 27th fret is actually pretty useful if you're playing music that isn't like made for guitar drop C. Like if you're playing something in like E or like F or something and you just need to hit that high note once. Or like if you're covering music that wasn't even meant for guitar and it has that high note, well, you can just like reach it. Oh, and people say, oh, you can just bend up to hit that note. Well, yeah, for sometimes you can bend up to hit that note, but other times maybe it's more like a shreddy section and you need to like quickly and repeatedly hit that higher note. Well, you can't just be bending up all the time. That's crazy. So it does come in handy, and I've used it for a few of my songs. The thing is though, that when you're playing up that high, it kind of sounds like, like that octave effect where it adds like the up octave. It starts to kind of sound like that when you're playing up there. So while it is useful, I wouldn't say that you should be using it all the time because it does start to sound a bit odd. Actually hitting the note though is not so bad. Like if you play up on the 24th fret a lot, it just feels like that. It doesn't feel like terrible to hit. All right, and then more talking about the pickups, the ToneZone Air Norton, it's the classic Ibanez shred combination. So if you know what that sounds like, you already know what this guitar is going to sound like. It's not quite a modern sound. It's got like a lot of mids in general, but it's not the super cutting modern sound. So if that's the sound you're going for, like with your like metal distortion playing, you're gonna have to just like change your amp settings or your plugins a bit just to give it more cut. Like it's pretty easy, especially if you're doing a lot of layers, a lot of lead work. It's pretty easy to have just too many mids and to get lost in the mix. So just watch out for that. And yeah, as I alluded to before, the neck pickup sounds more like a middle pickup. Just because you have all these frets here, it pushes the pickup back. So that's just like physics, you know. Obviously, you're not going to be getting those Stratocaster like 21, 22 fret neck pickup position tones out of this. It sounds a bit more like a middle pickup. So really, if you're like shredding and then you want to switch from like the bridge to the neck, it does sound okay like that. Like there is enough of a difference where you can hear like, oh yeah, I switched to the neck pickup. But if you're going for those more like traditional classic tones, it might not work. Speaking of single coils though, the coil split is actually pretty good. It's pretty usable. I was surprised. Like whether you're doing the bridge or the neck, it does make a difference. You do hear a difference. It sounds pretty good. The style of music I play doesn't really use that too much, but in just like messing around and trying it out, I was pleasantly surprised. So overall, I'd say it's a pretty good like lead guitar shred machine. It's a bit more versatile than I thought it would be, just because it does sound pretty good. You can use it for a lot of styles, from like rock. You could probably do jazz on it. You can do the metal, everything in between. All right, so let's talk about the overall likes and dislikes. So I do like the playability of this guitar, and that's pretty important because you have to play the thing to make music. That's the most important thing to me. It's a bit more important to me even than tone. Like obviously the tone has to be good sounding. We have to like the notes we're playing. We have to like how it sounds. And the audience has to like how it sounds too. But in general, the audience isn't like a bunch of guitarists. Like it's a bunch of people who like music. So if your guitar tone sounds like a little worse to you, it's not really gonna make a difference, if at all, to them. Like they just want to hear a good song. I definitely like the looks of the guitar. You know, the black and gold I'm a fan of. Of course, gloss black, it gets all the fingerprints, all the dust, all of that. Oh well. But I do like the look. And at first I wasn't sure about the white pickups on the black guitar, but I do like the contrast and how it looks too. So that grew on me pretty quickly. Definitely like how the body feels. The arch top feels really great. The cutaways, the carves feel really amazing. No problems, it doesn't get in the way. I do dislike how I've had to set it up a bit more often, but like in all fairness, I'm not a professional guitar tech or anything. So who knows, maybe I made a mistake. That's entirely possible. And I do dislike the angled output jack just because I prefer the jack facing down. And then I do have to say it, even though it's a double locking guitar, I do wish it had the locking tuners just to make string changes that much more easy. I know a lot of people say it doesn't matter. A lot of people will get angry saying that little bit of weight might matter, even though the guitar is really well balanced. Just my personal preference, I do like locking tuners on everything. It's not a big enough deal that I'm gonna run out, buy locking tuners and throw them on here, but it would be pretty nice, especially for this price point. And speaking of personal preferences, I would prefer stainless steel frets on this guitar. That's just a preference of mine, as I've mentioned. And finally, I'm probably gonna block the bridge on this one. I'm not really like a whammy bar player too much. I just like how they feel when you play them. I like the tone they give because they've got the tone block. I really like how the nut is locked so you don't get any string slipping or binding or anything like that. I find that a blocked bridge, you know, with the double locking setup is super stable. And that helps a lot if you're doing like a lot of recording especially. Or playing live too, you know, it's good to stay in tune. And then the tone I like and dislike. In general, I like it a lot. I think it sounds pretty good. I do dislike it when I just need that extra like cut, that extra upper mid-range. You know, I got to give it the bump there. But that's not the end of the world. I can just change my plug-in settings, amp settings. Just throw that in there, add some EQ. All right, so would I recommend this guitar? Well, I bought the guitar, so you would think obviously I would recommend it. I'd say yes, if you're looking for a guitar like this, you know, like an arch top, like kind of shred machine, like you're looking for an Ibanez, you don't care that the neck pickup isn't a true neck pickup, then yes, 100% I'd recommend it. This guitar has been awesome. Big fan of it. I like all the songs I've made with it. It's fun to play on, fun to practice on. However, if having like a really expensive high-end guitar doesn't matter as much to you, or if you absolutely need those modern features like the stainless steel frets, more modern sounding, more modern voiced pickups, this guitar would not be the right choice, especially because there's so many options these days. Like with the Ibanez, like the Prestiges around the 2K USD range, those would be perfect because those have the stainless steel. Those tend to have more modern sounding pickups, like either the Fishman Fluence or even like the Fusion Edge. I've had good results with those. I've reviewed guitars with those too, so you could check those out on my channel. But yeah, and if you don't need like made in Japan price point, like you want to save some money, you don't care if it's made in Japan, you know, you could go down to like the LTDs, the more mid-range Ibanez stuff. Solars are pretty good. I'm a fan of those. You know, the Schecters with all their stainless steel frets. There's a whole bunch of companies out there making more modern spec guitars, and you can get one of those. Like, it wouldn't be like as high quality as this, but the quality would be good enough that you could still like record with it. You could play live. Like, you don't actually need to buy the most expensive guitar to sound good. You know, you just need to buy the guitar that meets your needs, that's playable enough that it's not hurting your hand to practice, that you like the look of, you like the feel of. And you can definitely get that with a guitar that costs like $500 less, or even like $1,000 less. You can still get something plenty workable. Although with all these alternatives mentioned, they might not have the arch top. So if the arch top really matters to you a lot, then that's going to narrow down your search a lot. Anyway, that's the lowdown on this RGA guitar. Did I answer all your questions? Did I leave anything out? Do you have any other questions too? Be sure to comment them down below. You know, this is YouTube. I have to say the YouTube things like comment, subscribe, share the video, print out every frame and mail it. Now I'm going to do the full mix demo. So thank you for watching. And as always, peace.